My boss's name is Catherine Pierce. My chief technology officer. The entire company knew she was the goddamn Ice Queen. But lately, she'd been acting strange. She cornered me in the office, late at night, tapped a list of names against my chest. Ethan, she said, I'm giving you two choices. Love me, or get the hell out of my company. I looked into her eyes, which held a kind of manic intensity, and my stomach dropped. This woman was serious. I'd been working until 11, the only light left on the entire floor a lonely beacon at my desk. The last few lines of code scrolled across my screen. Save. Compile. Done. I stretched, my joints cracking in the silence. Time to go. As I stood up, I almost walked right into someone. She was standing right behind me, without making a sound. Catherine Pierce. She was leaning against my cubicle wall, arms crossed, and I had no idea how long she'd been watching me. Her gaze was like a searchlight, and it made my skin crawl. Ms. Pierce. I took half a step back. You're still here. She didn't answer, just looked me up and down. It wasn't the way a boss looks at an employee. It was the way a butcher looks at a side of beef. Project finished. Her voice was low, but it cut through the empty office. Yeah, just wrapped it up. Email it to me, she commanded, then took a step forward. I could smell her perfume, a cold, sharp scent with a bitter finish. Ethan Hayes, she said, using my full name. Have you been avoiding me? My gut clenched. No, Ms. Pierce. It's just been a crunch. You know how it is. Really? A corner of her mouth twitched, but it wasn't a smile. You called in sick for the team-building event last week. You sat in the back row at my presentation on Tuesday. This afternoon, you saw me get in the elevator and you took the stairs. A cold feeling washed over me. The woman's memory was insane. She cut me off. She lifted a hand and traced the collar of my shirt. Her touch was light, but it made every hair on my body stand on end. I'm just giving you a heads up. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, her breath warm against my ear. I have the first draft of the next quarter's layoff list. And guess whose name might be on it? My throat went dry. I stared at her. Her eyes were bright, filled with something I couldn't read, but knew was dangerous. What are you trying to say, Ms. Pierce? I'm saying. She took a half step back, slipping back in her all-business tone, though her eyes didn't change, that I'm giving you two choices. Love me, or get the hell out of my company. She turned and walked away. The sound of her heels clicked on the polished floor. Click, click, click. Each one felt like it was stomping on my heart. I stood there for a long time, frozen. The back of my neck was cold. Shit, she was serious. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Catherine Pierce's face. And her words, love me or get out. What the hell kind of choice was that? I went to work the next day with dark circles under my eyes. I'd barely sat down when my desk phone rang. It was Catherine's assistant, Chloe. Ethan, Ms. Pierce wants to see you in her office. Now. Yes, now. I took a deep breath and stood up. My coworkers shot me sympathetic glances. A summons from the Ice Queen was never good news. I knocked and entered. Catherine was sitting behind her massive desk, reading a file. She didn't look up. Close the door. I closed it and stood there. The AC was blasting, and I felt goosebumps break out on my arms. She finally finished the last page, signed her name, and closed the folder. Only then did she raise her eyes to me. Sleep well? She asked, as casually as if she were talking about the weather. Fine. Really? She picked up her coffee mug and took a sip. You look terrible. I didn't say anything. She put the mug down and leaned back in her large leather chair. Something urgent has come up. The system at the London office has a problem. We need to send someone over immediately to handle it. She watched me, her expression unreadable. I've decided to send you. I was stunned. When? This afternoon. Chloe will book your flight. You'll be there for about a week. This was completely out of the blue. And normally, a job like this went to a more senior architect. Ms. Pierce, I still have a few projects to wrap up here. Hand them off to your team, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. This is an emergency. They specifically requested our best, and I think you're the right person for the job. She paused, then added, it'll be good experience for you. I looked at her. Her expression was perfectly professional, the standard tone of a supervisor sending an employee on a business trip. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Yes, Ms. Pierce. Good. Go get ready. Chloe will send you the details. I turned to leave. Ethan, she called out. I looked back. She was tapping a manicured finger on her desk, her gaze intensifying. It's not like home over there. Be safe. Thank you, Ms. Pierce. I pulled the door open and left. I could feel her eyes on my back until the door clicked shut. The plane landed late in the evening, local time. I turned on my phone and got a message from Chloe with the hotel info and project files, and a personal text from Catherine. Text me when you land. 5 words. I stared at it for a few seconds, then put my phone away without replying. By the time I took a cab to the hotel and checked in, it was almost midnight. I took a shower, trying to clear my head. Then I opened my laptop to look at the files. The problem was big. This was going to take a few days. As I was reading, my phone rang. It was an unknown local number. I answered. Hello. Are you at the hotel? It was Catherine's voice. I almost jumped out of my chair. Ms. Pierce, how did you? I asked if you were at the hotel, she said, her voice flat. I am. Just got settled. Good. Have you seen the files? I'm looking at them now. Can you handle it? It's complicated, but I think so. Good. There was a pause. It was silent on her end, not like the office. It's the middle of the night here. I knew about the time difference. You're still up. Couldn't sleep. Her voice softened slightly. Wanted to check on you. I didn't know what to say to that. The line was silent for a moment. All I could hear was the faint sound of our breathing. After a while, she said, Ethan, you didn't reply to my text. I forgot. Sorry, Ms. Pierce. Did you forget? She let out a soft, breathy laugh. Or did you just not want to reply? I honestly forgot. I was looking at the project files. I see. She didn't push it, changing the subject. How's the room? It's fine. Standard king. Send me a video. I froze. What? Send me a video. I want to see your accommodations, she said, as if it were the most normal request in the world. The company is responsible for ensuring the safety and quality of our employees' travel conditions. The request was completely out of line, but I couldn't think of a professional reason to refuse. Ms. Pierce, it's late. I'm already in bed. How about tomorrow? She was silent for a few seconds. Fine, she said, not insisting, but I expect it tomorrow. Okay, get some rest. Don't stay up all night. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer with a strange, unreal gentleness coming through the phone. Good night, Ethan. Then, before I could respond, she hung up. I held the phone, listening to the dial tone, and that feeling that something was deeply wrong grew heavier and heavier. The week abroad was a blur. The problem was worse than I thought, and I spent every day holed up in the client's server room until the early hours of the morning. Catherine's call came every night, right before I went to sleep. She never asked about the project, just small things. Was I eating well? Was I sleeping okay? What was the weather like? It felt like some kind of mandatory daily check-in. I gave her vague, one-word answers. The knot in my stomach just kept getting tighter. I finally fixed the issue, finishing a day ahead of schedule. I changed my flight and flew back that night. I didn't tell anyone. Mostly, I didn't want to tell Catherine. The plane landed in the middle of the night. I took a cab home and crashed. The next day, I went into the office a little late on purpose, hoping to miss the morning rush and draw less attention to myself. I had just sat down at my desk, hadn't even had a sip of coffee. Chloe appeared. Her expression was strange. Ethan, Pierce wants to see you. Now. Yes. Immediately. I put down my mug and walked toward her office. I tried to figure out what it could be. Maybe there was a follow-up issue with the project. I pushed the door open. Catherine was standing in front of her floor-to-ceiling window, her back to me. The morning light was bright, outlining her silhouette in a way that hurt my eyes. Ms. Pierce, you wanted to see me? She didn't turn around or say anything. The air of the room felt thick. I stood there, feeling deeply uncomfortable. After what felt like a full minute, she slowly turned around. Her face was blank, but her eyes were terrifyingly cold. When did you get back? My stomach plummeted. This morning. Wasn't your flight supposed to land tonight? She walked to her desk, picked up a piece of paper, and put it down. I checked your booking. You changed it. I was speechless. Avoiding me, she took a step toward me, staring. No, Ms. Pierce, I was just exhausted. I want to get home and rest. Rest? She interrupted, her voice rising. Resting so much you couldn't send a single message? Ethan, I am your boss. You returned from a business trip. Are you not required to report to me? She rarely lost her composure like this. At least, never at the office. I looked down. I'm sorry, Ms. Pierce. It was an oversight. Her chest rose and fell as she breathed, staring at me like she wanted to burn 2 holes right through me. After a moment, she took a sharp breath, forcing herself to calm down. Get out. Yes. I turned, desperate to escape. Stop. I froze. She walked right up to me, so close I could see the bloodshot veins in her eyes. She lowered her voice, each word seeming to squeeze through her teeth. Ethan, do not test my patience. My offer still stands. But you need to remember, my patience has its limits. She reached out and adjusted my collar, which wasn't even crooked. The movement was slow, deliberate, and full of menace. Don't push me again. Now, get out. I was the last one to leave the office that night. On a whim, I went up to the roof to have a cigarette. No one ever came up here. It was windy, with a view of half the city. I needed to think. Catherine's behavior wasn't just off, it was dangerously unstable. This was way beyond a simple case of a boss harassing an employee. This was a crazy, obsessive fixation. I had to do something. A transfer? To another department? She practically owned this company. Where could I possibly go? Quit. The job market was tough. With a mortgage and a car payment, it wasn't the right time. Just as my head was spinning, the door to the stairwell creaked open. I turned. Catherine was standing in the doorway. She clearly hadn't expected anyone to be up here and froze for a second. When she saw it was me, her expression shifted and she slowly walked over. What are you doing here? She asked. Just a smoke. I held up my pack. Ms. Pierce here. Getting some air. She walked to the railing and stood next to me, looking down at the river of traffic below. The wind blew her hair across her face. She wasn't wearing any makeup and looked tired, less aggressive than usual. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there side by side. The atmosphere was weirdly calm. I finished my cigarette and stubbed it out. I'm heading out, Ms. Pierce. Okay, she said without moving. I walked toward the door. Just as my hand touched the handle, she spoke. Ethan, I stopped. That choice I gave you. Is it so difficult? Her voice was thin, carried away by the wind. I didn't turn around. I don't understand, Ms. Pierce. Is being with me so terrible for you? She turned, looking at my back. The number of men in this company who would kill to be in my bed could form a line down to the lobby. I tightened my grip on the door handle. That's their business. And you, she pressed. You feel nothing at all? I took a breath and turned to face her. Ms. Pierce, you're my boss. I respect you, but you can't force something like this. Respect. She let out a short, harsh laugh and took a step closer, her eyes sharp. What the hell do I need your respect for? Then I have nothing to give you. You do, she said, her voice suddenly rising with emotion. You know you do. You're just not willing to give it. Her eyes were getting red as she stared at me. Ethan, do you think I'm so pathetic that I have to force myself on you? I never thought that. Then why do you avoid me? Why are you afraid of me? She demanded. Look at me. I lifted my head and met her gaze. Ms. Pierce, with the way you're acting, how could I not be afraid? My words seemed to hit her like a physical blow. She swayed slightly. For a split second, I saw something flash in her eyes. Was it hurt? But it was quickly replaced by an even deeper obsession. Fine. Be afraid, she said, forcing a cold smile. Fear makes people compliant. She walked until she was standing right in front of me, looking up at me. We were so close I could feel her breath on my skin. Ethan, you can't escape. You can either come to me willingly, or I'll break your wings and make it so you have no choice but to stay by my side. The choice is yours. After that night on the roof, Catherine and I entered a strange standoff. She didn't push me anymore. She didn't mention her choice. Work was normal, almost too normal. She was even more professional with me than before. But the invisible pressure was suffocating. She was like a net, slowly closing in. I was in the middle, and I could feel it tightening, but I couldn't find a way out. Friday night, my team went out for dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration for my successful trip to London. We went to a loud gastropub, and the atmosphere was pretty relaxed. Everyone had a few beers, and Catherine showed up as the big boss. She usually just made a brief appearance at these things. But she sat down, right across from me. Her presence immediately made things more formal. Everyone proposing a toast was suddenly very careful. She didn't act superior, though. She chatted with a few people and had a glass of red wine. But I could feel it. Her eyes, every now and then, would land on me, like a pinprick. I kept my head down and focused on my burger, trying to be invisible. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. It was a text. From Catherine. Don't drink too much. My fingers froze. I didn't reply. A minute later, another one came through. You have a sensitive stomach. My heart sank. How did she even know that? I looked up at her. She was holding her wine glass, talking to the director next to her, her profile calm, as if nothing had happened. That dinner was torture. As we were wrapping up, people started calling for the boss to give a speech. Catherine stood up and said a few encouraging words. Then her tone shifted. I'm heading west, so I can give a few people a ride. Ethan, you live out that way, don't you? I could drop you off. The entire table went silent. Every single person turned to look at me. My skin prickled. That's okay, Ms. Pierce. I can. I'll just get an Uber. It's hard to get one this time of night, she said, looking at me, her tone making it clear this was not a negotiation. I'm going that way anyway. It's no trouble. A few colleagues started chiming in. Yeah, Ethan, just get a ride from Ms. Pierce. Saves you from waiting around. I looked at Catherine. Her expression was clear. This wasn't a request. I clenched my fists under the table, then released them. Well, thank you, Ms. Pierce. I appreciate it. I was in the passenger seat of Catherine's car. The air was thick with that same cold perfume, now mixed with a hint of wine. She drove smoothly, her face unreadable. I stayed silent, watching the city lights blur past my window. Nervous? She suddenly asked. No, you're about to rip the seatbelt out of its socket. I blinked, realizing my white-knuckled grip, and let go. Sorry. She didn't say anything else. The silence returned. After a while, she asked address. I told her the name of my apartment complex. She put into her GPS, but then started driving in the wrong direction. Ms. Pierce, I think you missed a turn. It was right back there. I didn't miss it, she said, staring straight ahead. We're making a stop first. Alarm bells went off in my head. Where are we going? My place. My head snapped toward her. Ms. Pierce, I don't think that's appropriate. What's not appropriate? She said calmly. I need to pick up a file for a meeting tomorrow. I'll get it, and then I'll take you home. I can just get an Uber from here. Sit still. She cut me off, her voice turning cold. We're almost there. The car turned into the underground garage of a luxury high-rise. She parked the car, killed the engine, and got out. Come on. I didn't move. She walked around to my side, opened the door, and leaned in, looking at me. In the dim light of the garage, her eyes were unnerving. Do I need to drag you out? I looked at her, knowing I was trapped. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. I followed her into the elevator. It went straight to the penthouse. Her apartment was huge, decorated in a stark, minimalist style. Black, white, and gray. It felt cold, sterile. Have a seat, she said, kicking off her heels and walking barefoot across the floor to a bar cart. Want a drink? No, thank you, Ms. Pierce. I'll just wait for the file and go. She ignored me, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. She walked over and offered one to me. I didn't take it. She didn't seem to care, placing it on the coffee table in front of me. She took the other glass and sat on the sofa across from me, watching me. The file? I asked. She swirled the amber liquid in her glass. What's the rush? It's late, Ms. Pierce. Yes, it is, she said, taking a long sip. Which means we have all the time in the world. She put down her glass, leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Ethan, there's no one else here. Let's talk. The living room was lit by just a few spotlights, casting a dim, yellow glow. Catherine and I sat across from each other, a coffee table between us. The air felt like it had turned to concrete. Talk about what? I asked, my voice hoarse. About you, she said, her eyes fixed on my face. Why are you afraid of me? I'm not. Liar, she said softly. Every time you see me, you look away, just like you're doing right now. I shifted my gaze to the reflection on the polished floor. Ms. Pierce, we're a boss and an employee. It's normal to maintain a professional distance. Just a boss and an employee? She smiled, a cold, empty thing. I thought, at the very least, we might be friends. I didn't answer. There was no right answer to that. She didn't seem to need one, continuing on her own. I know what you're thinking. You think I'm crazy, that I'm using my power to force you into something don't you? I looked up. I wouldn't dare think that. You wouldn't dare, but you do, she said, her gaze sharp as a knife. You can't hide what's in your head from me, Ethan. She stood up and slowly walked around the table until she was standing next to me. Her shadow fell over me. My body went rigid. But I'm telling you, this isn't a game. She leaned down, planting her hands on the armrests on either side of me, trapping me in the space between her and the sofa. Her scent, that cold perfume mixed with whiskey, was overwhelming. I'm serious. Her face was close, so close I could see her long eyelashes and the suppressed emotion in her eyes. The first time I saw you wasn't your first day at the company, she said suddenly. I stared at her, confused. It was 3 years ago at a tech conference. You were on stage, presenting your optimization plan for that open source framework. The room was full of people, a lot of so-called experts. Her eyes unfocused slightly, lost in the memory. You were so passionate. You had this light in your eyes. Someone in the audience asked a really nasty, provocative question. You didn't even flinch. You just dismantled his argument calmly and clearly. I remember thinking, now that's an interesting man. Her fingers lightly traced the line of my eyebrow. The cool touch sent a shiver through me. Then you came to work for the company, for me. I watched you step by step. You were steady, hardworking, creative, but you never showed off. You were like an uncut diamond, covered in dust. But I knew there was a fire inside you. Her voice grew lower, laced with an almost obsessive tone. I wanted to keep you close, and not just at work. Ethan, you're different from everyone else. I knew it the first time I saw you. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Ms. Pierce, you've had too much to drink. I'm not drunk, she said, her eyes fixed on mine, terrifyingly sober. I've never been more clear-headed in my life. This isn't right. I tried to push her away, but my arms felt like lead. What's right? She cut me off, a sarcastic smile on her lips. Following the rules? Finding someone from a good family, and having a polite, boring life together? That's what's not right. I have feelings for you. I want you. What's so wrong with that? Her breath was warm on my face, carrying the scent of whiskey. Give me a chance. Give yourself a chance. Can't you just try to accept me? Her lips were almost touching mine. I jerked my head to the side. Ms. Pierce, please have some self-respect. The air froze. She remained in the same position, unmoving. The expression on her face slowly hardened. The faint light in her eyes died out, leaving nothing but a bottomless dark. She slowly straightened up and took 2 steps back. She picked up the untouched glass of whiskey from the table and downed it in one go. Then she walked to the entryway, grabbed a file, and held it out to me. Take it, and get out. Her voice was completely devoid of emotion. I took the file, my fingers trembling slightly. I walked to the door without looking back. As my hand closed around the doorknob, I heard her say from behind me, Ethan Hayes, you're going to regret this. I didn't turn around. I opened the door and walked out. As the elevator descended, I saw my own pale face in the mirrored walls. My back was drenched in cold sweat. I knew she wasn't going to let this go. I spent the weekend in a daze. Catherine's words echoed in my head like a curse. You're going to regret this. What was she going to do? I was on high alert when I went to work on Monday, but the entire day was quiet. Catherine didn't bother me. We didn't even see each other. On Tuesday, a rumor started spreading through the office. A major restructuring was coming, and the tech department might be split up. The news sent a wave of anxiety through the team. Wednesday morning, the official announcement came. The tech department was being split into 2 centers. Part of it was being absorbed by the new business division, and the core projects of the original department, including the ones I was in charge of, were all being reassigned to a new VP. It was a promotion in name, but a demotion in reality. Catherine was a goddamn artist. She hadn't touched my title or my salary, but she had gutted my role, taking away my projects and my team. She had neutered me. When the email went out, a cloud of gloom settled over our section of the office. A few of my guys came by my desk, not knowing what to say. I just waved them off, telling them it was fine. What else could I say? This was what she meant by regret. That afternoon, I was summoned to the new VP's office. He was a transfer from another company, a guy named Davis in his 90s. He had a permanent smile, but his eyes were sharp. Ethan, I've heard great things, he said, politely offering me a seat. Catherine specifically told me you were one of our company's technical pillars. I listened, saying nothing. This reorganization is all about optimizing our resources. The company values your old projects, and from now on, I'll be overseeing them directly. For the time being, why don't you handle some tech support and work on organizing our knowledge base? It'll be a good chance for you to recharge. He made it sound nice, but he was sidelining me. I'll do whatever the company needs, I said. Excellent, excellent. Mr. Davis nodded, still smiling. If you need anything, my door is always open. I walked out of his office and back to my desk. My monitor still showed the code I had been debugging, but none of it was mine anymore. Chloe came by and dropped a huge stack of binders on my desk. Ethan, Mr. Davis wants you to organize and archive the technical documentation for all these past projects. No rush, just get it done by the end of the month. I looked at the mountain of paper. Got it. I could feel the eyes of my coworkers on me. Some pitying, some curious. I lowered my head and started sorting through the yellowing pages. The second the clock hit 5, I was out the door. There was nothing to stay for. On the subway, my phone buzzed with a text. It was Catherine, enjoying the new position. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another one came. This is just the beginning. I always keep my promises, Ethan. The days of being sidelined were hell. I spent my time staring at old documents, with nothing real to do. The people who used to flock to my desk now kept their distance. It's amazing how quickly you can become a ghost. I'd see Catherine in the hallways sometimes. She was always surrounded by a group of people, walking quickly, looking important. When her eyes passed over me, they never paused. It was like I was a stranger. I knew what she was doing. She was waiting for me to break, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Friday night, I had a college reunion. It had been a long time, and I drank a lot. By the time the party broke up, it was almost midnight. I walked alone along the side of the road, letting the cool night air sober me up. My phone rang. I pulled it out. Catherine. I hesitated, then declined the call. She called back immediately. I declined it again. She kept calling. Relentless. Finally, annoyed, I answered. What? I snapped. It was quiet on her end, just the sound of her faint breathing. Where are you? She asked, her voice raspy. Out. With who? None of your business. Ethan. Her voice rose sharply. I'm asking you one last time, where are you? The alcohol had burned away my patience. Catherine, what the hell is your problem? It's after work. Who I'm with and where I am is none of your damn business. Who do you think you are? There was a silence on the other end. Then I heard her say, through gritted teeth, send me your location. Right now. Why should I? Because if you don't, I will get in my car and I will check every single bar and club in this city until I find you. And you know I'll do it. I was so angry I wanted to smash my phone. But I knew she wasn't bluffing. She would do it. I didn't want to make an even bigger scene. Furious, I sent her my location. Stay there. Don't move, she said, and hung up. I stood on the side of the road in the dead of night, watching the traffic stream by, a cold hollowness in my chest. About 20 minutes later, a familiar black sedan pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing Catherine's face. She was paler than usual, her eyes red, though I couldn't tell if it was from exhaustion or crying. Get in, she ordered. I didn't move. I said get in the car, she yelled. A car behind her honked. I yanked the door open and got in the passenger seat. The car smelled strongly of alcohol. She'd been drinking too. She didn't look at me. She slammed on the gas, and the car shot forward. She was driving way too fast. Slow down. I gripped the seatbelt. She ignored me, weaving through traffic. Catherine, you're insane. Stop the car. She suddenly wrenched the wheel, turning onto a deserted side street and slamming on the brakes. She cut the engine and slumped over the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking slightly. The car was dead silent. All I could hear was the sound of our ragged breathing. After a moment, she lifted her head and turned to look at me. Her eyes were bloodshot, filled with a thick, desperate pain. Ethan, her voice was a raw whisper. What do you want me to do? I just like you. I just wanted to be good to you. Why? Why are you doing this to me? She looked at me, and without warning, tears started to fall. One drop, then another, splashing onto the steering wheel. I was stunned. It was the first time I had ever seen Catherine Pierce cry. The woman who ruled the office with an iron fist, whose glare could freeze hell over. Here she was, in front of me, looking like a lost child, her shoulders trembling as silent tears streamed down her face. The car was filled with her choked sobs and the occasional sound of a passing car. The angry words I was about to say died in my throat. Looking at her red-rimmed eyes, her pale face, and a single tear clinging to her eyelash. The string inside me that had been pulled taut for so long. It snapped. To hell with my job. To hell with her threats. To hell with being rational. I reached out, not to push her away, but to pull her toward me, my arm wrapping around her shoulders. Her body went rigid. She looked up, her tear-filled eyes wide with shock. Disbelief. I didn't give her time to think. I leaned in and kissed her. It tasted like whiskey and salt. Her lips were cool and soft. At first, she was completely still, even tried to pull back instinctively. But I didn't let go. I cupped the back of her neck with my hand and deepened the kiss. It was gentle, slow, not like the demanding, predatory way she'd come onto me before. It was more like a confirmation that this fragile person in front of me was the same Ice Queen who had been making my life hell. A confirmation of what this storm of emotion inside me actually was. Was it her desperate expression? Or was it her choked whisper? I just like you? I didn't know. And I didn't care to figure it out. I was running on pure instinct. After a few seconds, or maybe an eternity, I felt her tense body slowly begin to relax. Her hands, which had been gripping the steering wheel, slowly lifted, and she hesitantly grabbed the fabric of my shirt at my side, like she was grabbing a lifeline. And then she started to kiss me back. It was clumsy, awkward, almost frantic. This wasn't the queen in control of her empire. This was just a woman, stumbling through a feeling she didn't understand. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. So, she wasn't invincible after all. The kiss finally ended. We rested our foreheads together, breathing heavily. The car was so quiet I could hear both our hearts pounding. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes wet and dazed, a little lost. You, she started, her voice raspy. What does this mean? I didn't answer directly. I used my thumb to gently wipe a tear track from her cheek. What are you crying for? I said, my own voice unsteady. She grabbed my wrist, and her gaze sharpened, the old Catherine flashing back for a second, but without the usual force. Ethan, I don't want your pity. It's not pity, I said, looking her in the eye. I just think you're a real pain in the ass when you cry. And I added, looking away, feeling a little awkward, you're loud. She stared at me, stunned, and then she smiled. Not her usual cold smirk or mocking laugh, but a real smile, filled with relief and disbelief. The corners of her mouth turned up, and her eyes curved with them. Even with tears still on her face, it was like a light had been switched on inside her. You asshole, she whispered, her voice thick and nasal but without any bite. She rested her forehead against my shoulder and wrapped her arms around my waist. She held on tight. You scared the hell out of me. She mumbled into my shirt. I thought you really didn't want me. I didn't speak, just tightened my arm around her. Outside, the city hummed along as always. But inside this small car, something had fundamentally changed. We didn't go back to my place that night. Or to hers. We just stayed on that quiet side street, in her car for a long time. We didn't do anything. We just held each other. Like two people who had been wandering in a blizzard for too long and had finally found a source of warmth. She rested her head on my chest and told me things in fits and starts. About how her parents were always busy when she was a kid. About how she had clawed her way to the top all by herself. About how everyone around her either feared her or wanted something from her. But you, Ethan, she looked up at me. You were the only one who never seemed to care what I could give you. I used my power, and you didn't flinch. I threatened your career, and you didn't really seem to care about that either. The more you resisted, the more I panicked. I didn't know how else to get you to stay. So I just got meaner, more aggressive. I was so afraid that if I loosened my grip for 1 second, you'd be gone. Listening to her, I felt a strange mix of emotions. All that obsessive, crazy behavior was rooted in a profound insecurity. I'm not going anywhere, I said, stroking her hair. It was softer than I'd imagined. Not anymore, she mumbled, nuzzling into my chest to get more comfortable. I've got you now. Her tone was a little smug, with that familiar, possessive edge. But for some reason, this time, it didn't bother me. It actually felt grounding. So that layoff list I brought up, she snorted. A bluff. and making me archive documents? I'll have you transferred back tomorrow. No, you can run the whole tech center, she said immediately, a hint of eagerness in her voice. Don't, I said. I kind of like the peace and quiet. She looked up and glared at me. Then how am I supposed to make it up to you? I thought for a moment, looking down into her shining eyes. You can start by giving me the normal relationship you owe me, starting with a proper first date. She blinked, and then a slow smile spread across her face. She leaned up and gave me a soft, quick peck on the lips. Okay, whatever you say. The next day was Saturday. My internal clock woke me up. I was in my own bed, and I was alone. It took me a second to remember that we had gone our separate ways last night. It had been her idea. She'd said, our first real relationship has to start with a real date. We can't just fall into bed. The woman had a lot of rules. I grabbed my phone and saw a few unread texts. All from her. Good morning, boyfriend. Attached was a photo of the sunrise from her balcony. Are you awake yet? What do you want for breakfast? I'll bring it over. Don't you dare say no. Ethan, if you don't text back, I'm just going to show up and start knocking. The last one was from 5 minutes ago. I couldn't help but smile. I texted back. Just woke up. Anything is fine. She replied instantly. Anything is the hardest thing to buy. I'll be downstairs in 10. Be ready. Less than 8 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened it. She was standing there in a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her hair in a ponytail. No makeup. She looked as fresh and clean as a college student, and she was holding several large bags of breakfast food. Morning, she said, looking at me. Her eyes were bright. She seemed nervous, but was trying to act cool. Morning. I stepped aside to let her in. It's not a big place. She looked around curiously, then naturally started laying out the food on my small dining table. I didn't know what you liked, so I got a little of everything. There were bagels, coffee, pastries, donuts, fruit. The table was completely covered. Are you feeding an army? I raised an eyebrow. I felt like it, she said, handing me a fork. Hurry up and eat before it gets cold. She was quiet while we ate, stealing glances at me every now and then. When I'd catch her, she'd immediately look down at her coffee, the tips of her ears turning red. This was a completely different person from the corporate she-devil who had cornered me in the office and threatened my career. What are you looking at? She finally grumbled, trying to sound intimidating. Just eat. I put a piece of bacon on her plate. You eat, too. She stared at the bacon for a second. Then the corners of her mouth turned up in a smile she couldn't suppress. Oh. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching her in its glow and giving her a soft, golden outline. It was just a normal morning, but it felt unreal in the best way. We were like any other couple. We went on dates on the weekends, saw movies, walked through the park. At the office, we were still supervisor and subordinate. She was still serious, and I still reported to her. But sometimes, when we'd pass in an empty hallway, she'd quickly brush her fingers against mine. Or during a long meeting, she'd tap the toe of her high heel against my shoe under the table, and then continue her presentation without missing a beat. It was a secret game that only we knew we were playing. She changed. A lot. She wasn't as sharp, and she stopped threatening to fire me, though her possessive streak still showed up sometimes. Like if I worked past 10, she'd call me directly. Ethan, go home. Now. The project will still be there tomorrow. Or, if a female colleague chatted with me for too long about work, Catherine would find a few extra things to question on that colleague's next expense report. It was childish. I never called her out on it. The whole business with my demotion was quietly reversed, and I was back on my core projects. No one knew what had happened. They just chalked it up to the mysterious whims of the boss. It felt like my life was finally back on track. Until one night, at her place. We were curled up on the sofa, watching an old movie. She was leaning against me, playing with my fingers when she asked, seemingly out of nowhere, Ethan, back then, why did you suddenly change your mind? I knew she was talking about the kiss in the car. The light from the TV flickered across her face. I thought for a moment, maybe because I finally saw that the person underneath all that armor could cry, too. She was quiet for a while. What if? What if I become horrible and impossible again someday? I looked down at her. She was looking up at me, a flicker of genuine anxiety in her eyes. I smiled and squeezed her hand. Then we'll deal with it. She frowned. That's not a real answer. It means I leaned in closer, touching my forehead to hers. That no matter what you are, the Ice Queen or a total mess, I'm all in. She looked at me, and her eyes slowly curved into a smile, looking like they were filled with stars. Then, she tilted her head up and kissed me. It was a long, gentle kiss that tasted like the sweet tea she was drinking and felt, for the first time, completely safe. When it ended, she whispered in my ear, her breath warm. "You're screwed, Ethan Hayes. You are never, ever getting rid of me." I pulled her closer and smiled. "Yeah, I know.